We want to welcome everybody to, I know this has been advertised as the 9th annual, but I looked very carefully and it's actually the 10th annual. So it was 10 years ago that we started with a small little event here in this auditorium. And it has grown over the past 10 years to where it, we've gotten really good attendance over the last few years. And of course we had the COVID pause in 2020, so we didn't have a conference in 2020, and last year we had a very small outdoor event. But this year it's coming back, and we appreciate you all coming here today. So we're going to get started. We have an excellent lineup of speakers today. We have New York Times best-selling author Mike Barra, who's been on Ancient Aliens and many other TV shows. And Peter Robbins, who's a world-renowned UFO researcher, who has had his work published in numerous publications and has been on numerous television shows as well. He's also produced a couple of documentaries, which he will share with you during his presentation right after lunch. And of course, Chris O'Brien. Chris O'Brien is one of the most respected UFO researchers out there today. He's a frequent guest on Ancient Aliens and other TV programs. We're very honored to have Chris with us. And so we're going to have a great lineup. Ken is here to talk about big bird sightings. Ken Gearhart. He's a very well-known cryptozoologist in the state of Texas. He's been on almost every television show dealing with strange creatures that cannot be explained, so we're very happy to have him. And so we're going to get started in a minute. I'm just waiting for our MC, and Daniel Allen Jones will be handling our MC duties, and he'll be with us in just a moment. We'll get started.
Yeah, smaller crowd than last year and smaller than the year before. The year before was larger. Yeah. There's not that many people here.
The speaker blocks a little bit of the screen. Thank you.
Oh, you're right.
Hello, hello. You guys hear me okay in the back? I think we could probably get this picked up a little bit. How's that sound? Well, you guys can probably hear me. It's great to be able to have you all here for the conference. How many of you guys were at the festival last night? Awesome, quite a bit, right? Awesome time, great performers, had an awesome event. So today is the conference where we have several presenters that are going to talk about different cases and a lot of the research and work that they've done over the years. My name is Daniel Allen Jones, and I'm honored to be the Master of Ceremony for today's conference. And this is the 10th anniversary of the Edinburg Out of This World UFO Conference. It's awesome to see. This is a long-running event now. We've got some great presenters throughout the years that we've had come out, and this is one of the first times that we've actually had the conference in this building. But it's great to be able to be part of this event for so long. This is my 8th time out. And I was going to see, before we really get things going, I asked this at the festival. There were a lot of people, it's hard to really see, but how many guys have been coming to this event for more than 3 years? Awesome, okay? Keep your hands up. 4 years. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, who's been here for all 10 years. Wow, you guys, that's that's awesome. Yeah, round of applause. I think that's incredible to see that, there aren't many events that have been going on this long, and it's really important that we keep this going in the community, so I am very glad to be able to see that we have people that are involved with this for such a long time. Of course, thanks to the city and the library and all the different departments with the city of Edinburgh to make this happen, and everyone for coming out to allow for that as well, so we're all very much a part of that.
Daniel, real quick, I just wanted to say that the very first conference was held here, way back in 2012. We had the very first one. So it's appropriate that in its 10th year, officially, that we are back here where it all began. So in recognition of this being our 10th, it's very, very nice to be in this historic auditorium again.
That is a great point, and for those of you who don't know, this is our local resident researcher and just been a wealth of knowledge for all things UFOs in Texas and beyond, cases like Roswell and so many others. This is Noe Torres here, who's going to be presenting, and I met Noe back in 2014 at another event like this one here in Texas, which is no longer active, and this is sort of the one that's been going on here in the Lone Star State for a while now, and it's just, we've had a lot of great adventures over the years. We went out to Aurora, which I'll be talking a little bit about as well, and it's one of those things that I'm glad we got to connect early on to see how things have gone on since all those years back, and how much has changed and developed in this field. Just a quick rundown and a few announcements before we get things going. Make sure that you keep your green wristbands from when you come back from lunch. That's going to be from 12 to 1, and that's on your own. And so you can go out to any of the different locations. Just remember, if you leave and come back, keep your green wristband, because that's how you want to be able to get back in. We've got a full lineup of presenters here. We've got Noe Torres, UFO Jane, of course. They're going to be showing some great information here. Aside from that, here to start, we have a few other presenters who are right now at the tables in front. We've got Ken Gerhard, Mike Barra, Christopher O'Brien, and Peter Robbins as well. They're all going to give excellent presentations later on. Just want to give you guys a heads up. If you haven't seen the schedule, I recommend, if you can, either get a physical copy or take a picture of the sign up at the front as well, so you can kind of keep track of the time frame we're going to go through. Noe has authored a number of books, not only on the Roswell UFO incident, but other Texas and Mexico related UFO crash incidents as well, which I think are particularly interesting because everyone knows Roswell, but there are a lot of other Roswell-like incidents and UFO events all over the world, and a lot here in Texas as well. So if you don't have any of his books, he's got a whole site, Roswell Books, and they feature him and our good friend Ruben Uriarte, who's featured here a number of times over the years here in Edinburgh, and they help to do a lot for these events. So they're going to be presenting on a lot of really great information about Texas cases and things that we don't really get to hear about a lot on the news or mainstream media, but that get integrated into the archiving process of keeping track of these UFO reports. They're going to get into a lot more about what that's been like and how this process has kind of helped keep a lot of this information intact over many years, because without this type of involvement, we lose this information. So it's really important to be able to connect with people in the community that have had sightings and who aren't worried or afraid of ridicule, to be able to share about something that's that's happened to them. And so we're grateful for that. It takes a lot of courageousness to come forward and share about something that most people might laugh at. So I'm very glad to be able to see this is happening and always been involved. UFO Jane is going to be helping out with that part as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic to these guys here. Let's give them a big hand of applause. It's great to be able to have you guys here. Welcome to the 10th annual Edinburgh UFO Conference. Let's get things going, guys.
Okay, good morning again, everybody. We're very happy to be back this year in more of a normal manner after we've gone through what all of us have gone through for the past 2 years. So we're happy to see all of you here. We appreciate very much your support. Over the years, I've spoken about some of the books that I've written. I've written, believe it or not, 29 books now. And most of the books have to do with cases elsewhere in the United States. Like, for example, my most popular book is my ultimate guide to the Roswell UFO crash, which is a big seller in Roswell in the gift shops. And I always get asked to talk about that. Then I also have a series of books co-written with John LeMay entitled The Cowboys and Aliens, The Real Cowboys and Aliens. This was UFO cases from the 1800s that happened during the Old West, what we consider to be the Old West. And that's been a very big series. But people always ask me when I've spoken about my books is, would it be possible for you to talk about local UFO cases happening here in the Rio Grande Valley? We're interested in more recent UFO cases. So I put together today a presentation, and I'm very happy to have with me Jane Kyle, who is a UFO sensation. If you haven't checked out her social media channels, her YouTube channels, and her website, she is bringing to the forefront a lot of important information about Texas UFO sightings. And I'm going to have Jane come up and speak a little bit about her work and show you some of the cases that she has been investigating recently in the latter part of my presentation. But I'm going to start off by sharing with you cases that have been reported to the Mutual UFO Network, of which I've been a member for many years, that have taken place here in the Rio Grande Valley in the past 3 to 4 years. Now, I was amazed. And I started this project thinking that since people were mostly home during the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns and so forth, it seemed to me that it would be likely that we would see an uptick in cases because people were home and they had more time to be in their backyard at night, to be looking up in the sky, which many people tell me that folks don't normally spend a lot of time looking up at the night sky. They're distracted by, other things, and they don't look up much. So, interestingly enough, when I looked through the MUFON archives of cases submitted from Hidalgo and Cameron counties over the past 3 years, I found an amazing number of extremely interesting cases, which I'm going to share with you today, including videos taken by witnesses and still pictures taken by witnesses. So, Mr. Monty, is that you? Did you just arrive? I can tell because of his Lost in Space shirt. Monty Earwood from San Antonio. Thank you for coming, Monty. All right, so we're going to get started here. Let me use my clicker, I think. So this happened in Los Fresnos in October of this past year, and it happened at 10:30 p.m. So looking through the MUFON case files, a witness said that the Ring camera in her front door caught this amazing sight, and that she's seen it on more than one night. It hangs out for some time, she says, and then moves away. Each time is different. My Ring camera has caught separate incidents in the past days, all different times, all moving in different directions. So I'm going to see if I can restart this video. And whoever's controlling the sound back there, we can turn down the background audio soundtrack a little bit, please. submitted to MUFON on November 1st, 2021. Another very interesting case was reported by witnesses in Pharr, Texas. And it was submitted in 2019. So the witness said, I was walking out the door with my daughter, and as I looked over the horizon, I saw this perfect stationary triangle. Now, triangles are a very interesting type of object that's seen a lot in the state of Texas. And my friend Jane is going to talk a little bit about triangle cases in other parts of the state of Texas in a little bit. But just to let you know that this is a very interesting triangle sighting. Can we do something about the feedback, guys? I was walking out the door with my daughter and I looked over the horizon. I saw this perfect stationary triangle that does not belong there. I don't think I'm standing near a speaker. So the witness said that she saw a perfect stationary triangle that I know did not belong there, and I told my daughter to hang on for a second, and I took a couple of pictures. The bottom right corner light was starting to fade, and it says that the witness said that they moved there in 2014 due to health problems. I spent a lot of night sky watching. I never saw formation of stars before that looked like this. And after I took some pictures and shared them with my closest friends and her brother, the lights started to fade away very slowly until they were gone. And the witness says what really shocked me was the fourth light on the left side, close to the north side of the triangle. This is a true event, and I'm telling the truth. So we have I have a lot of other reports of triangle sightings in the valley, but I picked this one because the witness had taken these pictures, and it seems like a very good case, submitted in May of 2019. Now this was interesting from Donna. We actually have a lot of cases submitted to us from Donna, and I have a friend who commutes from Donna to McAllen to work every day, and he has told me that he has seen objects over the expressway as he's driving west toward McAllen in broad daylight. Metallic, silvery looking shapes that do not follow a consistent pattern of flight like an aircraft would, but do more of a zigzagging motion. So this case was submitted to MUFON in August 2020, and it happened August 11th at 10:20 p.m. The witness said, I was taking out the garbage at about 10:30 p.m. I looked up in the sky and saw a white pulsating object that was very bright. I looked down for a brief second and the object changed to bright red, glowing. I fiddled for my camera on my phone. I looked back up, and that was when I shot two pictures of what was now some sort of vehicle. And you can see right here on the, it's very hard to see, but here in this picture, you can see very clearly some type of shape that's not like a star or a planet. It's something distinct. Down here is what it looked like when it was kind of a reddish orb. And then right here is when it was starting to recede. These pictures were actual pictures taken by the eyewitness. The vehicle had thick circular shape. I did not hear any noise. It actually got much closer before I could see that it was a vehicle. It seemed to be aware of my presence. Now this is something that people often talk about during a UFO encounter, is that they feel that these objects are aware of their presence and sometimes seem to be reacting to them moving in one direction or doing other things, and the object seems to respond. So that's a very interesting part of this story. After my photos, the vehicle simply disappeared, possibly very quickly. So this is another very interesting case from the Valley from a little over a year ago. This gentleman had just installed a brand new swimming pool in his backyard, and he was taking pictures of it from different angles. And he didn't notice that he had captured something until he was looking at the pictures of his pool later. And then he noticed, as you can see here where I put the arrow,
y'all got louder.
in the middle of the clouds, there's an object. And this is from 2020 also, November. So the witness said, while taking a photo of a newly installed underground swimming pool in my backyard, I noticed a silver dark cylindrical or egg-shaped object in the background.
Hey, the only reason I'm calling you is because...
And so you can see right here,
Bye.
it's a little bit distorted on the screen, at least from my perspective up here, but it definitely does not look like any natural object. It, for example, does not appear to be a bird. It has a definite metallic-looking appearance to it. And so, once again, this came from San Benito, Texas, submitted to MUFON, November 2nd, 2020. There's a lot of things. Okay, I was wondering if we could just go ahead and turn the sound on the slides totally off because it's overdriving the sound system. Yeah, I'm going to try playing this slide again. Yeah. Yeah, I have to escape from the slideshow. Oh, here it is. Woo! It was on 100%. Sorry. All right, we're going to try this again. Thank you, guys. Much better. So you can see the orb right here. And I did a screenshot and a close-up down here in the lower left. So this happened in McAllen, and it was reported to MUFON on November 1st. And the person taking this video said, I took my telescope out for viewing the moon and planets and came across this star, quote unquote. It caught my attention because it was shining red, blue, green, orange, and purple. I managed to record it, and it looked like it was shape-shifting. On one of the videos I took, it seemed like it burst into a sphere. I can't explain entirely what I saw, but it certainly looked interesting. So that was submitted to MUFON in November, and it happened over McAllen. Now this was a very interesting case from the SpaceX launch site. This particular witness was out to watch one of the test firings of spacecraft that are being developed at Boca Chica, Brownsville area. This February 7th, 2020, at around noontime, I was with my wife and my cousin and his wife taking pictures at SpaceX, and the guards kept telling us to move along, move along. My cousin and I were taking pictures and saw nothing there. But then when they got back to the house, went over the pictures, he had nothing on the pictures that he had taken, but this person had this strange object that was hovering over the launch area. Nothing in the picture picture, then it appeared and moved totally all over the place and gone behind the rocket. So this strange object. So people ask me, well, what would be the chances that these craft would be at a launch facility? Maybe it was related to something going on there. But actually we know by looking at historical UFO reports that these strange craft are often seen over military installations, over airports, and over NASA facilities, including Cape Canaveral. So we don't know if this is a process of where they're observing us, they're doing reconnaissance of some kind, they're interested in our efforts to go into space, or what. I'm just saying that historically, there have been many reports of these objects being seen at these sorts of installations. So that's an actual photo taken by the people who saw it. We have this interesting case next from Harlingen. It happened in October this past year at 8:30 p.m. Now, I like to observe the language of the person reporting these cases. In this case, it was a person who obviously had some experience with aviation and who perhaps had a military background, maybe even flies planes himself. And it says the object flying at about 30,000 feet, approximately 3,000 miles per hour, no aviation strobe lights or wingtip lights, was moving very fast, no airplanes overhead. Now this is interesting. He verified the presence of this object in the sky using the Flight Tracker app. There was no sound, no sonic boom, no contrails, no heat signature, no glowing fuselage. Captured on video, consistently appears as a hexagon with a black hole in the center, as you can see right there. Very well-defined features, possible gravity bending warp drive or propulsion system that bends light. Very interesting case from Harlingen. This particular witness was taking pictures of the moon just above the rooftop of his house when he caught this strange object that you see right here. Kind of a cylindrical shape, flattened disc perhaps, and so this happened in January of last year at 3:15 a.m. Taking a picture of the moon, the witness said. Sky was clear, and suddenly it came out of nowhere. So this was the actual photo that was taken from the eyewitness. Now, sometimes people tell me, you're talking about in your books, in my books, I'm talking about all these cases that happened a long time ago because lately I've been writing books about UFO cases prior to 1940 and dating back to the 1800s. Why aren't people today seeing and taking pictures of these craft? And my response to that is, open your eyes. People are seeing these all the time. They're reporting them to MUFON, they're reporting them to the local media. Jane has been receiving many reports from throughout the state of Texas. She'll be talking a little bit about her work in a few minutes. So people are reporting them, people are taking pictures. I worked for the McAllen School District, and I had one of our security officers come up to me holding out his phone. And I kind of knew what was coming because I'm known as the UFO guy in the district. But he came up and he said, I was taking my break at my house at 3 a.m. here in McAllen, and I captured this. And he had a very interesting picture of a glowing orb doing the zigzagging right above the roof line of his house. So people are seeing these objects, they're taking pictures of them. So people always ask me, how do I know it's something unusual or unexplained? A lot of it has to do with the appearance and the motion, especially the motion. If it's going in a smooth, consistent arc across the sky, less likely to be something unexplained. If it's doing non-ballistic motion, and doing a lot of strange movements, turning around, not turning around, but suddenly reversing course and zooming off in a different direction, then you can probably be highly confident that it's something that's not easily explained. All of us go to the grocery store, right? Well, this gentleman in McAllen was at the grocery store when he saw something highly unusual right above the HEB sign. It was dark, cloudy, and misty around 7 p.m., February 2019. I was at the HEB parking lot, walking back to my vehicle after placing a shopping cart back in the stall, and I saw a long blue streak fly across the cloud so fast it was gone within a second. I was facing south towards HEB, and the blue light streak was only visible for 1 second, which spanned a quarter mile across the sky, going west to east. So that was submitted to MUFON in February 2019, very interesting. And even though this is not an actual picture, the eyewitness provided a sketch, which he did using Photoshop, of what it looked like that he saw. Those of you who went to the UFO Ranch Thursday, we had a great program. All of us enjoyed reliving the accounts and hearing from Joe Ponce, living first-hand eyewitness. Is Joe here today? Okay. There was a big UFO incident, for those of you that may not know the story, that happened here in Edinburg in 1966, out just north of town. And there was a role in that incident, we feel, for, that Moore Air Base had. Because Moore Air Base, even though at the time it was no longer an active military installation, supposedly, it was an agricultural research station. We know that military aircraft were still touching down and landing there late at night, and there were military activities going on. So even today, we had a lady who spoke during the UFO open mic on Thursday night, and she talked about having lived right near the air base for many years and seeing all kinds of strange activity and strange military aircraft landing and taking off in the middle, in the dead of the night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I have a friend who works at the air base, who worked at the air base for many years, and he said that all the employees were made to go into a darkened building where the windows had been darkened when these strange craft would land at night, and they were not allowed to look at them or to discuss anything about them. So we had a report filed to MUFON in January of this year about an incident at Edinburg near Moore Air Base. June 10th, 1996 was when the incident actually happened, even though the report was filed this year. Said the UFO came right above my head and hovered for approximately 10 minutes. This is not my first experience with unknown objects or entities. This has been going on since I was a child, but did not understand it. I had no idea what or about MUFON until recently. When the UFO hovered over me, I did make a sheriff's report. I also spoke with, and the name has been redacted, who at the time was in charge of Moore Field Air Base, which is directly north of the sighting. I've had numerous other times of lost time and odd happenings. So this is very interesting because we had another report from the proximity of Moore Air Base. There was a lady who saw glowing light. She lived nearby. She drove out in the middle of the night toward Moore Air Base because she perceived that that's where it was coming from. And then right in the middle of the road, hovering about 40 feet above the road surface, was this glowing, large glowing object. And the propulsion system or the radiation, whatever the electromagnetic field that was surrounding the craft was causing all the brush around her to be wildly swaying as if there was a storm in the area. So then she came fairly close to it, and then she was stopped by state troopers, she said, who told her that she could not go down that road and to turn back. And they forced her to do so. So that just happened about 5-6 years ago. We had that report from them. We have a lot of reports from Brownsville. I was sharing with Jane and others that Brownsville seems to be extremely active for UFO cases. And I mean, I could spend an hour just on the Brownsville cases alone, but I'm just going to briefly touch on a couple, and I'm going to have Jane come up and talk about what's going on in the rest of the state. Here was a formation that was, the witness said, from 2020, February 2020. I was in my kitchen when our 2 dogs began whining and scratching at the back door. I told them to stop. They then ran whining to the front door and scratched at it too. Now, animals are very sensitive to the appearance of UFOs and UFO entities. So always, historically, animals hypersensitive. It happened with my mom's own encounter on North Sherry Road in Mission in the 1940s. My family had several dogs, and the dogs became extremely agitated before the object appeared. And then when she went outside to look and the object was hovering right above her, the dogs were jumping up in the air and snapping their jaws all around her and running around in circles around her as the object hovered. So in this case, the dogs kept whining and running back and forth between the 2 doors. I walked outside to my backyard and with the dogs to possibly see what was bothering them. So when they looked up at the sky and they saw a long line of what appeared to be stars. I first thought it was an unusual formation of stars. I quickly saw the whole formation was moving in a straight line, and I was stunned at the number of objects I was seeing. They were moving in a southeasterly direction. We also had another report of very similar. There was a group of 2 and 3 objects close together in a line. Every now and then one would appear by itself in the line. Only a few of them would suddenly move out of formation. Actually, this is more description of the same case. I apologize. It's the same case continued. So at some points it looked like the objects were solo, and other times it looked like they were a long line of objects. One of the sources of the most UFO reports in the valley are from hunters, people who are out hunting late at night. And Starr County, for example, in deer blinds, from cameras that are set up to track deer and other wildlife. So in this case, Los Fresnos, Texas, from June of last year, I was at our hunting lease located 3 miles northeast of Laguna Atascosa. It was about 10 p.m., a clear night, no clouds. Started to look at the Big Dipper, which was very bright. At the very bottom of the dipper, I observed a very bright flash of light that lasted about 2 seconds. And shortly after, I saw a white sphere travel into the same area. So this is very notable. The witness stated that the UFO appeared after a bright flash of light and disappeared after a bright flash of light, almost as if it were engaging some kind of propulsion system, or perhaps entering and exiting some kind of portal or wormhole, something to do with the propulsion system of the craft. We had a report from Mission, and this will be the last one I cover, and then I'm going to have our guest today, Jane, come up and speak. My wife and I were taking pictures of the Big Dipper and saw 4 lights that looked like stars just below the dipper. First they were stationary, and they started going in a circle, and then separated, and then went away from us and disappeared. I could spend hours talking about cases in the Rio Grande Valley just over the past 3 years. But I want to step back and look at a wider perspective, cases from the state of Texas, reports that our guest UFO Jane has been receiving at her website, texasUFOsightings.com. And so, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have our special guest today. She's a YouTube star when it comes to providing information about UFOs, and we're very happy to have with us Jane Kyle. Jane, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting to be here. This is a treat. I guess when I started getting into UFOs was about when this festival was starting up. And so I can't believe this is the first time I'm here. I can't believe how little I knew about the 1966 Edinburg UFO case, and I think that sums up ufology like in a nutshell right there. There's so much to uncover, and people think, it all started in 1947 in Roswell, and that's hardly the truth. It started in the late 1800s in Texas, right? So I'm UFO Jane. That's not the name on my birth certificate. I became UFO Jane. So I am not an experiencer. I think I saw a UFO one time maybe. I didn't report it. And I just tried to debunk it in my head. So I don't come from that perspective, but I think that's been good for me because I can live vicariously through all the witnesses. And it was out of college is when I met a guy who, he grew up reading like in actual books about UFOs at the library, pre-internet. So once I learned that UFOs were real, I couldn't unlearn that. I had a journalism degree, I enjoyed writing, so I just started documenting. And then people started sending me their reports directly, and so it turned into a duty, an obligation to bring witness reports forward. And so I've been documenting for about 10 years now, cases here in Texas. Noe just shared some really great ones. I think that SpaceX sighting is really intriguing. There's a lot of good ones in there. So Mutual UFO Network is a huge resource that I also do refer to regularly. So thank you so much to MUFON and witnesses who submit there. So so that's me. I'm just going to share. So I'm a patterns person. People ask me, what's the best case you've ever investigated, or the most exciting thing? And I kind of draw a blank because for me it's more patterns. So we'll start off. Well, actually, let's just real quick so you guys can get a feel for how large this phenomenon is here in Texas. So there's a great website called UFOstalker.com, which takes in a lot of the MUFON reports. So you can see 100K overall reports that were in the system last time I checked, 7K in Texas. For my website, since I've been reporting in 2012, I've documented over, almost 2,000 cases in Texas. And really, they show up in the big cities where you have a lot of people to report them. But people ask, where's the best place in Texas to go see a UFO? Anywhere. Just look up in the sky, you'll probably see something strange eventually, or something cool. Shooting star is cool, it's always worth it to look up. But I think populated areas where there's a lot of people to report. All right, so the triangles. These are, the triangles are why I'm still here 10 years into this. So when I first learned, oh my gosh, UFOs are real, people are seeing them all the time in Texas. They're tweeting about them, they're uploading videos on YouTube, they're reporting to MUFON. None of this is on CNN though. None of this is on Fox News. None of this is even in, to be fair, some of our local newspapers here. I wasn't seeing it in Austin Monthly or anything. But they were seeing all the time, and the triangles are the most persistent. I am 100% sure that the triangle UFOs are real and real active. I cannot say if they're alien. I haven't met an alien yet. Nobody's brought a body to me. Sorry to bust any bubbles. But what's really frustrating about UFOs, it's really, really hard to get a good video or photo of one. And I remind people, just go out on a night with like a really bright, beautiful full moon that's just like awe-inspiring that you can't believe, and take a picture with your phone. It's gonna look like a street light. It's not gonna do any justice. So trying to capture a UFO, which is often at nighttime, and you're not expecting to see it, so you're not prepared. It's not like you have your tripod set up. These are really, really, really hard to capture on photo and video. At this point, 10 years in, I should have more compelling evidence for you, and I wish that I did, but that's just the fact. That's the fact of the matter. If there are aliens visiting, they don't necessarily want to be seen. So what I tell witnesses to do is if you see something, go draw it right away and write down. And so I followed up with this witness and had them draw, what they see. This is very typical. Dark black, matching the night sky often, triangle craft with 3, white lights, and yes, sometimes you can see something in the middle there that's pretty typical. So this was Houston. It looks like I do not have, again, I'm a patterns person. This is seen today. 2013 was a really active year, I would say, though, for triangles. So here's another triangle. I have a link to the video here, but I'm not going to mess up the presentation, but there is a video that's very, very great of this 3 lights that appear to be rotating. Pretty incredible. So definitely maybe try to check that out on the website later. Here's another one from Tomball, Texas. Very, very 3 lights in triangle formation, unequivocally. Here's my really, really big caveat here, though. When I did first start documenting UFOs, I really did think aliens were invading or visiting. And then I learned, people just have wedding celebrations, and they launch Chinese lanterns. And then I learned, oh my gosh, there's nighttime parachuters that jump out of planes with flares. That looks crazy, guys. And you would be crazy if you saw that and were like, oh, that's normal, and didn't report it. So Tomball, Texas, actually has nighttime parachuters. And so there have been triangle cases that I've debunked as that, and I can't be, but this one was weird. This one was weird. Now, entity encounters. Yes, so I've really focused on the nuts and bolts UFO cases. I don't know if that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People just tend to report that to me because that's what I report on. But there are entity reports. You guys, I'm sure, are all familiar with the gray alien. We got to touch a gray alien yesterday at the festival. So that is definitely a common entity that abductees, contactees see, UFO witnesses see, and I have received those reports. Entity reports, though, are not like a sighting of strange lights in the sky where there's a good photo or a good video. There is often, always in my case, lacking the physical evidence that I can verify. And that is not to take away from entity encounters or abductees or contactees, but that is, it's a data point back to what I was saying earlier, how hard it is to capture these UFOs on photo and video. I think this might be a little bit by design. But I did want to share this entity report. So this was, sorry, I'm not really great with this mic. So this was near Dallas, again, 2013, really crazy year in Texas. I don't know what was happening. And this witness saw this diamond-shaped, like flaming craft, and they also saw these little figures around it. Now, I tried to follow up with this witness, I did, and they didn't really want to. And again, that's very common. So I will get this really great report, and then I will try to follow up, do another interview, even private, you don't have to be on YouTube, and nothing. And these people aren't making up things. For the most part, the reports I get are kind of mundane. I saw some weird lights. They don't want to follow up with me. And I get a lot of reports, I'm not crazy. I didn't even think UFOs were real, but I saw something. So people are very self-conscious about their experiences, very hesitant to share them. And I think once they send me a report, I think sometimes it's a feeling of I got this off my chest, I'm done with it. And so again, I think that goes back to why this is such a hard phenomenon to grasp and understand, because those experiencing it are very hesitant to report it and hesitant to relive it. They don't want to keep talking about it. Lastly here, and I don't know how we are on time, but I want to go back in time. I know we're here for recent cases, but again, the pattern of these objects are so hard to capture on photo and video. My feeling is that if we all had, our Instagram and our phones and stuff back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we'd have some insane videos, because people are just, I don't think, aware how prevalent the flying saucer sightings were, I guess all over America, but in Texas particularly, from 1947 on. So I wanted to highlight cases that were sent to me recently, but from back in the 50s. So, I received, a witness report. So this is out of the Waco, Texas area. So of dozens of flying saucer crafts forming V shapes and hovering and moving over a Texas Air Force base. I'm trying to think if I have the name. It's a Waco Air Force base. It's no longer an Air Force base. Somebody might know the name. And this witness, again, wanted to be anonymous, very common. They said they saw dozens of bright silver flying saucers. This was 1954. But then there was another report sent in to move on of witnesses that saw the same thing. So we've got separate witnesses recalling these sightings and then coming forward now, in modern times to share. So of course I do some digging though. So I will, document cases, but I try my best to verify, follow up, and only really highlight the most compelling evidence. And these witnesses, I think, were telling the truth. Because I was able to verify in the Waco Tribune from the 1950s that this Air Force base had actually installed towers to detect flying saucers. So something tells me if Roswell was just a secret spy balloon, and that's all it was, why was an Air Force base in Texas looking for flying saucers in the 50s? Why was debris from Roswell flown to Fort Caswell Air Force Base here in Texas before ending up at Wright-Patterson? So again, I'm a patterns person. The saucers were very active here in Texas in the 50s, and now we're left with triangles, orbs, kind of discs, kind of cigars, much more elusive, these sightings. And look how we're evolving our own tech, right? Like, look at the drone. I learned that there is a drone. The Mars rover had its own drone, right? So there was a UFO photo on Mars that was our own drone, right? So it's getting really, really hard to distinguish our own craft from alien craft, but that doesn't mean that they're not there, but it is really challenging. So I hope this information has helped you guys to know what to look out for. I do recommend to try to debunk sightings, because that's how we can find the golden cases, right? So it's okay if you thought that Chinese lanterns were aliens. It's okay. Still report it. All right. Thank you, guys.
Let's have a big applause. Beautiful Jane. I was telling Jane that we really appreciate the younger generation becoming involved in UFO research, because they truly are the future of continuing to bring this topic forward. And Daniel Jones as well has done a lot to keep things going. And I'd like to see, Jane, I'd like to see both you and Daniel involved in the Edinburg UFO Conference for years to come.
Love it. Yeah, we'd love to come back. Yeah.
So, oh, by the way, you and I are both Texas Longhorns, by the way.
Oh, yeah. 18
I didn't take the course about UFOs at Texas, but I did take a very interesting course, astronomy course, called the Search for Extraterrestrial Life.
Did you really?
With Dr. John Scalo, who at the time was working at McDonald Observatory. Anyway, it opened my eyes. This was longer ago than I'd like to admit, but in the late 70s. And it was a very scientific-based study of what are the chances that life exists out there, and it really opened my eyes. So I loved my experience. I took a number, actually I had enough astronomy classes, even though my major was not astronomy. I had enough astronomy classes at UT that I could have been an astronomy minor, except they didn't have minors anymore at that time.
Astronomy was my hardest class.
Yeah, once we got to the spectral shifts and all the mathematics,
It's hard.
I just, no. So we're going to take a short break while we set up for the next presentation. Daniel, is Daniel here? He'll be announcing our next speaker in a few minutes, so we'll just take that break now, and the next presentation will start at 10:15.
When you get back, we'll go over our notes. Look at all the exits.
I'm sorry. She should have let the game go up. Yeah, if we got and I didn't like that.
Thank you. Yes, that's right. I glitched, you know, and it had... No, I remember now. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Hey, there you are.
And